Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am so very happy to be here with you today and to introduce Yuri Castro, who will lead this conversation, this talk that is part of a series that we call Seeds of Knowledge. And the topic that he's going to lead today is the path to forgiveness. Good morning, Yuri. Hope you are doing well. For all of those who are coming to our live today, if this is the first time you tune in to one of our discussions about Spiritism, please note that the Solitude Center for Spiritual Living, our group, is an organization that is a bit different than most. We are 100% virtual. And the other area that makes it a little bit different is that our founding members are spread all over the world. They are coming to you through their work from China, from Germany, from Brazil, from the US, and our members are truly spread all over. Being 100% virtual is wonderful with the new technology, but also creates a bit of a problem, which is mainly time zones. There's not enough time for us to come together, and I'm really happy that we get together through videos like this. But Yuri, thank you so very much for being here. For those of you who have not met Yuri before, he is a spiritist volunteer. He is truly committed to the dissemination and practice of the spiritist teachings. He's also a member of the Conscious Living Spiritist Group in North Miami, Florida. Professionally, Yuri is a clinical psychologist. But with that, I want to say thank you, Yuri, for being with me. And I will go to the backstage, and you have the mic. Thank you so much for your presence today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Marcia, for the invitation, for the opportunity to be here talking about Spiritism. And specifically, today it's going to be about the path to forgiveness. And I want to start the talk today showing this image here, showing this drawing, and asking each one of you that's watching this, which one of those three would you say is the path of forgiveness? Is that the one on the left, the hard one? The one with sinkholes and stones, rocks jutting out from the ground? Is it the medium one with some obstacles there still? Or is it the one on the right, perhaps, the easy one, the one that's clear and free? So we're gonna do the talk, and we'll bring this image back for reflection afterwards. The act of forgiveness. So we learn from Spiritism that the act of forgiveness, unrestricted forgiveness, emanates from noble feelings from two attitudes. We're going to learn that forgiveness is one of the pillars of love, is an act of love. The act of forgiveness, and that means, and when I say forgiveness here, I mean both forgiving someone that has maybe done something to you, and also forgiving yourself or asking for forgiveness. So there's three facets to the word forgiveness, or the act of forgiveness. It is part of our evolution as immortal spirits. As we grow spiritually, as we go through trials and tribulations and reincarnations and times in the spiritual plane and everything, we're evolving. We're always evolving. And learning to forgive or to ask for forgiveness is definitely a very fundamental building block in our path, in our staircase to the evolution. But is it easy to forgive, or is it hard? Is forgiving or asking for forgiveness a hard thing to do? I think somebody may have a different answer to this, or most people may agree that it's a hard thing to do. And something I like to do when I'm giving this talk in person, or whenever we have a live audience, is I asked them to do this exercise. So if you're watching this with more than one person, 2, 3, or 4 or more, I'm going to ask you to do this exercise. I'd like you guys to close your eyes and raise your hand if at any point in your life you found hard to forgive or to ask for forgiveness, and maintain those eyes closed. So raise your hand if you found hard to forgive or to ask for forgiveness at any point. And now you open your eyes. So then look around. And what usually happens when we're doing this live is an interesting reaction from people, because they look around, and if not all arms are raised, the vast majority of the arms are raised. And they look around. And that in itself is validation that, one, it's a hard thing to do, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. And two, we're not alone. We're not here by chance in this moment on planet Earth, in this specific stage of the evolution of our planet. We are all learning different things, but in the end, we're all on the same boat. What are the obstacles then for forgiveness, for the road to forgiveness, for the path to forgiveness? I named but a few, because those obstacles alone, I think, would be enough for a sole lecture on this. Pride, selfishness, arrogance, wrath, pessimism, vanity. And we know that pride and selfishness are often touted as the scourge of the the current human condition. Those are the two, our biggest internal enemies that we're still learning to overcome. And waiting for the other person to ask for forgiveness can also be an obstacle, because a barrier, because, and I brought this Latin saying here, nemo dat quod non habet, which means one cannot give what one does not have, basically. Oftentimes, we are expecting somebody to ask for forgiveness when they don't have that sort of humility in their heart still, or they are finding hard for whatever reason to ask for forgiveness, for our forgiveness. And waiting for someone who wronged us to ask for forgiveness is an obstacle. And as we'll learn, we don't have to wait for that to grant them forgiveness in our hearts and in our conscience. And that's the right path to take. Still regarding obstacles, the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, psychographed by Chico Xavier, by Emmanuel. And just a parenthesis here, for those who have not watched my lectures yet, I like to put on the top right corner of the screen the book, the bibliography for that specific slide. So if you like what it's there and everything, you can just purchase the book and read it for yourself. And that's something that I encourage people to do, because the habit of reading is an amazing one. So this book specifically talks about, and this is message 177, called Conventional Opinions. And it says, Emmanuel says, do not become excessively attached to the crowd's judgments. Habit and conventionalism exert a great power over those judgments. So he's urging us not to get overly attached. And then he goes and he lists a few things that I think are so interesting to us, because he says, if you tolerate offenses with love, you are called a coward. If you truly forgive someone, you are considered a fool. If you suffer with patience, you are worthless. If you dislike couple pleasures, you are declared to be abnormal. So he's talking about forgiveness, that because if we truly forgive someone, the conventional opinion may regard us as a fool. Why are you forgiving that person? You got to make them pay. You got to teach them a lesson. You got to show them that you deserve better, and this and this and this. You're being too naive. You're being too nice, a fool. So if we truly forgive, we may be considered a fool. But the thing is, the path to forgiveness is the one where we truly forgive and we disregard these conventional opinions, because we know in our hearts that that's what Jesus taught us, that that's the right way to go, to actually forgive people. And we'll see how many times in a little bit. It is a learning process, though. This road to forgiveness, shall we say, is a learning process. We are constantly evolving. So, how can we expect to know the path of forgiveness in its entirety already? It's very, very hard. We still stumble. We may still fall in our path, in our march towards our own progress, which is intransferable. And um, it will happen. It does happen. We can only halt the progress or slow the progress, but progress does happen. We are not expected to know, and this is something for us to put into our minds, that we don't know that yet. We're still learning to forgive. Forgiveness is a hard thing to do, and we're still learning, and we got to keep trying, but we're still learning. And mistakes, meaning like when we make mistakes towards someone else, then we need to ask for forgiveness. Or if somebody makes mistakes towards us, and or if somebody wrongs us, they will ask for forgiveness, or they will need our forgiveness, which are two different things there. They are part of any learning process I put there. Once we forgive, though, the burden becomes lighter. As we leave behind a weight we no longer need to carry. Because oftentimes we are like that little woman there, carrying that big burlap sack with, I don't know, rocks, whatever that may be, which looks very heavy because she's grunting and you can see the grimace and everything. We are like that, carrying with us these feelings of resentment that are born out of the lack of forgiveness. And once we learn to forgive, it's like we drop that sack with rocks and we can march forward with serenity towards our plenitude. It is a arduous path, though. Let's not be mistaken by that. But it's also a learning process that's part of our evolution. Unfortunately, we don't have this book in English. This is called Liberation Through Love by Divaldo, psychographed by Divaldo by Joana de Angelis. And it talks about the biological influence. So this is chapter 9. Talks about biological influence of harboring these feelings that I just mentioned before, due to the lack of forgiveness. Hatred, resentment, remorse powerfully affect the organism despite their emotional origin. So Joanna is talking about something with an emotional origin affecting something with a biological origin, our bodies. And we don't need to go too deep into Spiritism or even in Spiritism at all to realize that sometimes these emotions can cause us sickness even. But she's going to be talking more about that, so it's interesting. And she says, the damaging vibrational loads that are thrown by the mind into the central nervous system will affect the circulatory system with negative results for the respiratory system. At the same time that the endocrine glands will be harmed by these energies, sending them to the immune system, which is destroyed. So in this little part here, we see the interconnectivity of our minds, our feelings, our bodies, and everything. And she's talking about damaging vibrational loads due to these hatred, resentment, all these lower feelings being cast by our minds into our body and affecting everything. Because one thing is like a domino effect. One thing affects the other in sequence. And then we have disarray in our biological system because of that. And she says, a large number of organic illnesses and psychological disorders arise from troubled feelings. Yes. As again, this is something she's bringing, although I dare say we don't even need Spiritism to teach us that. If we are attentive, and we'll see that a lot of the times we become sick, or we become we have some sort of illness, or even our immune system gets lowered because of stress, hatred, resentment, and everything. If we go to the gospel according to Spiritism, we're going to see there are two ways to forgive and avoid future problems I put there. So and those two ways we can see almost as those two trajectories that I put there. Trajectory A, which is straight there. Can we forgive and learn to forgive and move on? That's A. B is not so simple. It's one that where we may forgive, we may not, we may forgive later, but then we come back and they wrong us again, and then we don't forgive the second time, and we keep going like that, reaching the same end goal as A, but going in all those circles. So the gospel says that there are two ways to forgive. One, it says it's a noble and great, it's truly generous without any hidden thoughts, which delicately avoids hurting the self-esteem and susceptibility of the adversary, even when that same adversary has no justification for his or for her acts. So the noble and great way to forgive, which is the A there that they're talking, is specifically without any hidden thoughts. So there's no hidden intention behind that forgiveness, that act of forgiveness. And even it goes even further to say that it avoids hurting the person that hurt you, even if they have no justification for what they did. If meaning, like, if they wronged you for no specific reason, or they wronged you when they shouldn't have wronged you, and then you still forgive anyways, but you're careful with them. You're careful with their feelings. That's the path A. The second one is when someone who has been offended or think they have been offended, which is an interesting distinction the spirits make, imposes humiliating conditions on the supposed adversary, making them feel the weight of the pardon, which can only cause further irritation instead of calming. So making them feel the weight of the pardon, that's interesting. And they continue saying, where upon offering a hand to the offended, this is not done with benevolence, but rather with ostentation, so that the person may say to others, look how generous I am. So that's path B as well. Because if we think of our evolution, if we are going in circles like that, or if we're forgiving just for the sake of forgiveness, or if we're forgiving to say, I forgive you because I'm better than you, and you see that, I'm going to show you, like all these hidden thoughts and hidden purposes behind our act of forgiving someone, then this is not the way to go, as they're saying here, or imposing even humiliating conditions like, I'll forgive you, but I'm going to tell everybody what you did and look how great I am, how benevolent I am that I'm forgiving you, and everybody will know that. So basically, one is the forgiveness that comes from the heart, and the second one is the one that comes from the lips. And in terms of future problems, this lack of forgiveness can cause even cases of obsession. And we talk about spiritual obsession, for instance, due to a lack of forgiveness. There's plenty of books in the Spiritist literature that will approach cases like that. It's hard to even mention basically any book from André Luiz. Life in the Spiritual World, I think. That's the name of the series. Any book from that, you will see lack of forgiveness always causing problems. There's one that comes to mind too, from a psychograph by Ivone Pereira. And she says, in this book that she psychographed called Love and Hate, there's this case of obsessions that led even like the person being obsessed to suicide, more than one person in that family to suicide, because of 400 years ago in the 1500s, when they were in the Inquisition and everything, they wronged this Jewish family, and then this Jewish family, when they died, they started to become the obsessors for this other family. And even after 400 years, the book is 19 something that this is happening, in the 1900s, so like 400 years later, because of their lack of forgiveness, they were still carrying all that resentment, all that hatred. And we had a case of pretty strong spiritual obsession there because of that, of lack of forgiveness. So these are things that do carry on, and it's important for us to talk about it so we can be careful with ourselves and with the ones around us too. If we dive into psychology, there are many lines of treatment from the clinical psychology point of view that will help with the practice of forgiveness, that will help somebody either ask for forgiveness or forgive. And I brought one here, but there are many ways. And in psychology, there's not one size fits all by the way. So this is one that I brought, that's, I think it's interesting for people to know. And this is from the book Forgiveness Therapy by Dr. Enright and Dr. Fitzgibbons. And they talk about four phases of forgiveness. So number one, the first phase is the uncovering phase. So during the first phase of forgiveness, you will improve your understanding of the injustice and how it has impacted your life. So understanding how somebody who wronged you, how that injustice towards you has impacted your life. In what ways has it impacted your life? Number two is the decision phase. So during the second phase, you'll gain a deeper understanding of what forgiveness is and make the decision to choose or reject forgiveness as an option. So you gain a deeper understanding of what the forgiveness is during the second phase, the decision phase, and you're gonna choose to, to make decision to forgive or to reject the forgiveness or consider it. So still gaining a deeper understanding. Number three is the work phase. During the third phase, you'll start to understand the offender in a new way, which will allow positive feelings toward the offender and yourself. So this is probably one of the hardest jumps in this sequence here, because it's understanding the offender in a positive way, meaning like they're still somebody who is struggling with their own evolution, maybe with their own feelings of love, and they are or greed or selfishness, whatever that may be, that they're struggling with, that offended you and that caused you to become offended. And working towards that, having that empathetic view, that's the key word here, that empathetic eye towards the person and towards yourself as well, because sometimes we can become our own victim, our own victims in the case of something like that needs forgiveness. And the fourth phase is the deepening phase. During the final phase of forgiveness, you will further decrease the negative emotions associated with the injustice. You may find meaning in the experiences and recognize ways in which you have grown as a result. Wow, this sounds very good. In finding ways and recognizing ways in which we have grown as a result of that action, of that wrongdoing. And I think this is deep and very beautiful as well, because we are always learning, we're always improving, and everything that happens to us happens for a reason. Could be something we already came and we decided to go through, or could be something that's happening to us because of our free will, because of everything that we're doing through our actions. But the thing is, anything that happens to us, we can find new meanings for that, and we can find ways to utilize that as tools, as building blocks for our own growth. And that's the fourth phase there. Going back a little bit more to the realm of Spiritism, and specifically its literature, we have this book, amazing book called The Astral City, psychographed by our dear Chico Xavier, written by André Luiz, and this is the first one in that series that I mentioned. In this specific book here, the matron Laura, she's talking with André Luiz about forgiveness, and she says that many spirits will spend centuries trying to overcome bitter feelings of hatred and resentment during their earthly sojourn, only to revert to them again on re-entering the spirit world. Meaning, like, they go back and they fall into those same traps that they were falling from before. They had fallen before. The problem of forgiveness, André, she says, according to Jesus, is extremely serious and cannot be accomplished merely with lip service. Remember what we talked about a few slides ago with the gospel according to Spiritism? The two ways to forgive. She's saying exactly that. It's not accomplished by lip service, just by uttering words, I forgive you, but having hidden thoughts and hidden actions behind that. And she goes on by saying, for while a superficial pardon is but a question of words, those who would really forgive must dig deep into themselves and cast off the venomous drags of former times, because we all come with a multitude of previous selves, of people that we were in previous reincarnations. And we all come with that. So she's saying Those who would really forgive, must dig deep into themselves and cast off those drags. What? Selfishness, pride, arrogance, all those things that have been drags to us, to our spirits. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that we're working on, and we'll get there. If we go to the Spirit's book, question 886 says, what is the true meaning of the word charity as employed by Jesus? And they say, benevolence for everyone, indulgence for the imperfections of others, and forgiveness of injuries. So it's talking about forgiveness of injuries as being part of charity, as the word employed by Jesus about how we can be charitable human beings. And 887 question says, Jesus has also said, love your enemies, but would it not be contrary to our natural tendencies to love our enemies? And that's a great question. How can we? It's so hard to love our enemies, those who wrong us or who insist on wronging us. How can we love them? It's so hard to already have a full feeling of love from somebody who's neutral, perhaps. Imagine somebody who we don't like or who doesn't like us, or both. And the answer is amazing. It says, it would certainly be impossible for a man to feel tender and ardent affection for his enemies. And Jesus did not intend to prescribe anything of the kind. To love your enemies means to forgive them and to return good for evil. By doing so, apologize for that, you become their superior. By vengeance, you place yourself beneath them. So we want to rise as spirits ourselves, and by acting with vengeance, like they say, we place ourselves beneath them, and we need to rise above the injuries and the offenses that come towards us. And he's talking about, again, loving your enemies, meaning to forgive them. And that's an interesting piece there if we think about it, to forgive. Then in terms of reincarnation, if we go to this book called The Consoler, it hasn't been translated yet, unfortunately. We have that question 333 says, in the divine law, but it's in process of translation, though, thankfully. In the divine law, is there forgiveness without repentance? There is only one divine law, that of love that embraces all things and all beings in the infinite universe. Embraces all beings and all things in the infinite universe. And he goes on by saying, the sacred chance of undergoing a new incarnation granted to us by God is in itself forgiveness or the magnanimity of his law. However, this opportunity is only granted to spirits when they wish to redeem themselves by renewing their moral values through sanctifying work. So the fact that we are getting a new incarnation every time means we're getting a new chance, a new way to make a lot of things right that we made wrong in the past. Those people we wronged, we may be born in their family, or they may be born in our family, so we can do good by them. So a lot of that is already showing this forgiveness of our Heavenly Father towards our own ignorance and our own mistakes, and the magnanimity of his law. Even if we think about reincarnation as well, without the limits of the incarnation, let's say like the veil of forgetfulness that we get because we don't remember everything that we did in previous reincarnations, it would be so much harder to forgive, wouldn't it? If we remember everything that those around us did to us, and vice versa, all the things that we did to them would be so much harder to forgive ourselves or to forgive them if we remembered everything. So even by having that sort of mechanism in the process of reincarnation, where we have, like I said, this veil of forgetfulness, is already an opportunity to do, like they say, their sanctifying work, renewing our moral values through forgiveness. The book Living Spring, from the Living Spring collection, psychograph by Chico, written by Emmanuel, says that sometimes we may feel that to forgive or to ask for forgiveness constitutes an act of debasement when it's actually the opposite. So, an act of debasement meaning what? Like lowering in quality or in character or humiliating ourselves. Sometimes we may even think that, okay, I'm not going to humiliate myself asking for forgiveness. Um, but it's actually the opposite. And again, it's more related to conventional opinions that, remember, if you truly forgive someone, you're considered a fool, as we learned from the previous message. It's not an act of debasement, it's the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And this is from Acts chapter 20. And spread the blessing of forgiveness, and you will strengthen justice. So this is from the Living Spring message 117. We have what we give. And justice here meaning treating the other fairly, considering our own evolutionary stage as well, both ours and of our brothers and sisters. So spreading this blessing of forgiveness, truly forgiving someone, we're going to be strengthening justice. Well, look how beautiful that is. So that's another one of the benefits of truly trying to learn and internalize and externalize the real forgiveness. When we said about before about the basement, now talking about humility, which is very much an act of humility as well. If we go to the gospel according to Spiritism, we'll see that humility is an essential component in the path to forgiveness. When we put ourselves in the position of fallible apprentices, we can begin to understand the need and value of forgiveness, both the necessity for our own evolution and also the value that that act brings us in our lives. Jesus put humility into the category of virtues that bring man near to God. Look how beautiful that is. And even in the message, in the book, hasn't been translated yet, but the message number 2 from the book Harvest of Light, which is called To Forgive, it says that with the help of silence and the power of humility, we can exercise forgiveness. And Jesus taught us so much. And we'll go back to Jesus in a second about humility and about the importance of acting with humility. And in only the 33 years that he was incarnated here, but he's still, of course, still teaching us. Going back to the Living Spring, this book psychographed by Chico, we have this message 159 called With Love. It says, those who love their neighbor know above all to understand. But if we really do love the brother or sister on our path, the scenery of our life changes because the light of love bathes our vision. Therefore, love and just as mud can never offend the light, offense can never reach you. So I underline there mud and light, and when he's saying love there, he's urging us to love. Therefore, love. And just as mud can never offend light, offense can never reach you, never touch you. So the idea here, and we'll see how Emmanuel does these two things with those words that I underlined there, that is so poetic and so beautiful. It says, you will learn to listen without disgust, even if crime reaches your ears, and you will help your adversary even when you feel offended, because forgiveness combined with complete forgetfulness, which is so hard, for the blows you have received, will arise spontaneously in your spirit, just as tolerance is natural for the spring that receives the stones that are cast into it. Arising spontaneously in our spirit. And that is, I think, for a lot of us, is still a little far from our reality, but we'll get there. And we get there by practicing, by being humble, by trying and improving in the process. You will see 4 words underlined there or underscore there, and is mud, light, spring, and stones. And this is something he does in this message that he does so well, like I said, is even poetic, because the spring doesn't revolt with the stones cast into it. And he's making here, from at least from my view, two counterpoints here. So he's talking about mud and light. He's talking about the spring and stone. So the spring, something serene, something pure, clear. And he's talking about light, something that bathes us, something heavenly, even. And then he mentions mud and stone. So mud, the thick, the viscous substance, dirty, and the stones, coarse, rough, brunt. Those two things cannot offend light and spring, meaning these lower feelings cannot touch these higher feelings, these higher virtues of our spirits. Look how beautiful that is. And for us to internalize that with the passing of, well, with the learning of forgiveness, the true act of forgiveness. And as we learn, and this is about gratitude as well, forgiveness then is an act of love. Love keeps coming back in every time we look about forgiveness. Love your enemies, love this, love that, is an act of love. To forgive someone or to ask for forgiveness, you're giving them a piece of your heart, as we see there. You're asking them to forgive you and understand your condition, but that is love, and that creates bonds, such as with gratitude. It creates bonds between spirits. Chico Xavier used to say that forgiveness is a lesson so hard that Christ let it come last. And he even says that the courage of love creates the blessing of forgiveness. The courage of love, so the courage to truly love someone and to truly love fully, creates the blessing of forgiveness, and vice versa. The true forgiveness fostering even further love. And we dive a little bit here now into self-forgiveness and the book Happy Life from Joanna De Angelis, psychographed by Divaldo Franco. We talk about self-forgiveness. For those who speak Portuguese and saw last week, Marcia and Aliana talked about self-forgiveness. So it's something that's definitely coming up, and that's something we do need to be attentive and learn and practice. Joanna says that after our mistake, let us not fall into the pits of remorse and despair. You cannot allow yourself to be consumed by regret. It only has the function of making you aware of the harm done. Forgive yourself, encourage yourself, and begin the task of repair. So she's saying here that we must not let ourselves be consumed by regret, by guilt. And it's very hard. I speak for myself. I'm my biggest critic, but not my biggest cheerleader. And oftentimes we're like that. I think we struggle to forgive ourselves, but we also need to remember we are still learning. We are still on our path to ascend spiritually. And we will make mistakes. They are part of the process. Being alive is not easy. This is not, we're not here on vacation having fun only and everything is beautiful and pink and blue. We are here to learn. We are here to make mistakes. So we must forgive ourselves as well when we make mistakes and understand what happened and try to improve. And it's very hard to forgive someone if we don't stop to analyze ourselves first and realize that, like every other creature in this planet, we are also fallible and we will make mistakes. So this road or the path of forgiveness also includes self-forgiveness. And if we look in the book Jesus in Our Days, says here, do not nail yourself to the cross of a guilty conscience after you realize your error. Rise from the ashes and immediately start reparations, thus avoiding future expiatory returns. Joanna is saying here, she continues by saying, ask for forgiveness and adopt a new approach regarding those whom you offended and harmed. If they do forgive you, it will be good for all involved. But if not, understand them and move on, avoiding the same mistake. Meaning, if they do forgive you, excellent for both of you. If they don't, understand that they're not ready to give you that yet, as we've seen in the second slide of today's presentation. They don't have that yet. So understand that and move on and avoid the same mistake. And in a Emmanuel also talks about how in a perverse and aggressive society, Jesus chose love as a solution to all problems and the unrestricted forgiveness as efficacious therapy for all illnesses, because a lot of those are born out of the lack of forgiveness. In terms of reconciliation, then let's talk a little bit more about this. In Matthew, we have that agree with thine adversary quickly whilst thou art in the way with him. Yeah, because we don't know the day of tomorrow. We don't know. We only have the present. We don't know. We can't change the past. We cannot change the past. We cannot necessarily know the future, but we do have the present. We do have the now, the here and now, in this family that we have, in this body that we have, in this life that we have. That's what we have to learn and to make a difference, because we don't know if the people around us will be around us in these perfect conditions for change as they are right now. And in the question 337 in the book The Consoler, which is a book, like I said, it's in process of translation, if I'm not mistaken, they ask, how can we carry it out? So how can we carry forgiveness if our adversary does not share our desire for reconciliation? Which is similar to what we said before, Joanna said, in Jesus in our days. And the answer is, we must always fulfill our evangelical duty, seeking out our adversary for the necessary reconciliation and forgetting any offense committed against us. If the other party persists in resenting us, the matter must be overlooked by us for the sake of true fraternity, because those who maintain the purpose of retaliation already cultivate a living wound in their hearts. Those who cultivate the purpose of retaliation, those who maintain the purpose of retaliation cultivate a living wound in their heart. So let us not be that person. And if somebody else is, what's going to happen is they will be that woman that we saw carrying that burlap sack so heavy full of rocks, because they're going to be carrying that resentment towards us. So if the adversary does not wish to reconcile with us, it's okay. We must do what we have in our power, which is to truly forgive and or to truly ask for forgiveness. And if they can't reconcile or they don't want to just yet, we move on and understand and love them anyways. And this is the book Harvest of Light that I said it's not translated yet. So this is the message number 21 that's called The Best for Us. And it says, on days when offense hits us in the face, forgiveness, much more than a blessing for our supposed offenders, is and will always be the best for us. The best for us, because then we're not going to be carrying that load. Those who harm us or hurt us often find themselves so attached to their own distress that deep down they suffer much more than us. Deep down they suffer much more than us. Those who find themselves so attached to that distress, to that memory of that person did that to me and I'm not going to forgive them and they must pay, they must learn. So it is and will always be the best for us. So if we forgive someone or if we truly ask for forgiveness, it is always the best for us. And then we go to the Bible now. And in Matthew we have, if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. The reality here is, whenever we truly forgive, or when we're truly asking for forgiveness out of our humility and understanding of the importance of forgiveness, it's not going unnoticed. Nothing we do goes unnoticed. Even if the other person, or if nobody sees it, even if we're forgiving in our minds and our hearts and we praying for the person, we are truly asking for forgiveness, all those things are taken into account. And then we have the famous the famous passage that says that, Peter came to Jesus, said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? And I always say when I'm doing this talk that I like to put myself in the position of Pedro there and try to imagine him asking that question in that moment, and then him suggesting or offering a number, specific number, 7 times. Because I imagine in his head when he was going there, he was saying, okay, it's hard to forgive 1 time, but maybe we can do it. I mean, 2, but 3, no, 3 is too much. 7 times, like he probably guessed the number there. I think it would be a pretty high number, given the difficulty to forgive 1, 2, even 3 times. And Jesus said, I'll tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7, which is 490. I've seen few different translations of this passage in the Bible. Some said 77, which is still extremely high, but we'll go with the majority of the translations that I've seen, which is 70 times 7, which is 490. So Peter asked if it was 7 times, and Jesus said no, 490. And you can imagine like how he was probably taken aback by that answer. And it's an interesting story because Chico Xavier said that he was doing a lecture once, and a woman came to him afterwards and says, Chico, my family is so hard against me, my husband and this, my son, they don't care for me, this and that, like they offend me every day, and that it has been like this for 20 years, etc., etc. And she's like, I have forgiven already 490 times through all these years. And Chico turned to her and said, my daughter, Emmanuel, his benefactor, spiritual benefactor, said, Emmanuel is right next to me, and he's saying it's 490 times each offense, So each time, each offense, each time that you are like offended by someone is 409 times for each one of those. And then the woman just turned and left a little upset with the answer, not satisfied with the answer. So it is very hard. It is very hard, but we'll get there. In the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, also psychographed by Chico, by Emmanuel, we have this message called The Corroded Treasure. Message number 24 says, we must work industriously to eliminate the corrosion that has attacked the treasures of our spirit. It is indispensable to grasp the perfect selflessness and unconditional forgiveness of the gospel story that we may truly move forward to meet with Christ. So this is incredible because it's talking about unconditional forgiveness. So we must eliminate this corrosion. And if we remember, what Laura was saying to André Luis was these drags of past time, this corrosion that has attacked the treasures of our spirit. The treasures by meaning the noble and elevated feelings of love, forgiveness, gratitude, and all of that. Talking about Jesus then. The cross did not change his serenity. This is from message number 170 called Spiritual Control. The cross did not change his serenity. And while on it, he asked forgiveness for the crowd's ignorance. And this is such a beautiful, beautiful, deep moment when he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So in that moment when he was being at his worst, in that dire moment that humanity was doing the atrocity that it did at that time, he asked for forgiveness for them. And that forgiveness flows from his lips spontaneously because of Christ being who he is. It flows spontaneously, but that's so beautiful. And that is his, almost like one of the last things that Chico was saying that he taught us, because it is so important. And even if we go to, the Lord's Prayer or our Father, forgive us for our trespasses. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So the forgiveness is even in this famous prayer that we have. So now putting into practice, I often like to bring a practical component to my lectures so people can not only be instructed and perhaps inspired by the lectures, but also put those teachings into practice, because somebody may say, oh, nice, I love learning about forgiveness, I love those things you're saying, makes sense, but it's so hard to do. I know how to do it, so how can I even try? And for that, we should look for small instances in which we can forgive and ask for forgiveness from the bottom of our hearts, not from our lips merely, as we have learned, because those will add up. So I brought here 3 ways that we can maybe practice forgiveness. One, through a direct action. So going to someone, asking for forgiveness, or going to someone and truly saying, like, I forgive you, and forgiving them. Probably the hardest one to do. The second one is through a sincere prayer, because our thoughts have the power to create, to modulate, to construct. Our thoughts are very, very powerful. So through a prayer, a sincere prayer, asking for forgiveness or forgiving someone who has not even asked you for their forgiveness, or for someone who you don't have contact with anymore, but you forgive them, do a prayer. And the third one, probably the easiest, I would say, is through a loving thought, similar to the second one I mentioned, but this one is just through a loving thought, asking them for forgiveness or truly forgiving them. Because if we look back here, as we'll see, when I ask which one was the path of forgiveness, I think we have and I'm sorry for playing with the preposition here. The path to forgiveness is for sure the one on the left, but the path of forgiveness is the one on the right, the easy one. As Emmanuel tells Chico, because Chico says, Emmanuel tells me that the person who learns to forgive has a clear path ahead of them. Look how beautiful that is. Unencumbered by lower emotions, unencumbered by guilt and by all of that. Once we learn to forgive and we truly forgive, we will have a clear path ahead of us. We will have a much, much easier way into our own spiritual evolution, be it in this life or in the next one. So with that, we reach the end of our meeting today. I hope to have approached this delicate topic with care and hopefulness as well, and to understand these obstacles inherent to the path of forgiveness, but understanding that once we acquire that forgiveness and we practice that forgiveness, the path ahead is a clear one. Have a blessed week, and thank you very much.
Hi there. Thank you so much. This is an amazing topic, and I know we're at the end. Just a thought, Yuri, I don't know, with your background, you probably have talked or come across the idea of Johari's window. Have you?
No?
It's a Johari's window is a framework. It was
Oh,
developed. Yeah,
yes, there's the graph and like the 4 blocks there. Yes.
yeah, the four quadrants like a
Quadrant.
window, right? And each one, it's either known to self or known, not known to self, and then
Mm-hmm.
known to others and not
Others,
known
yeah.
to others. And I don't know, when you were talking, it just that model came to my mind
Mm-hmm.
because when you speak about the beautiful words that came to us through the work of Allan Kardec in the
Mm-hmm.
Spirit's book about forgiveness, where specifically you talked about the fact that wow, you can do this with conditions and humiliating the other,
Yeah.
etc., or not. And I always thought when I look at the model that it's not, but let's pretend it was 25% of ourselves, which is open to ourselves and to others, which is our public persona, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we protect that public persona quite well, but we also protect the our blind spots, which is people can see but we can't,
Mm-hmm.
or the hidden area, which is, oh boy, those are the ones that we use our masks to not show who we truly are, right? Let's say I'm an arrogant, really proudful person, but I put the mask, and this is my mask of a humble, giving person, right? And the forgiving yourself or asking for forgiveness is exactly opening to known to others and known to
Yes.
self, to the areas that is hidden to others, the blind spots, the hidden to others at the hidden area, or hidden to yourself as the blind spot. And I always think in that model, Yuri, and I'm going to end my reference here, which is it takes courage to say, Yuri, I don't know, but could you give me some feedback so that I can diminish my blind spots?
Mm-hmm.
And you, as the purveyor of information, you can just destroy me, or with trust in you, so it's a two-way street. With trust, you open it, and I can become, and this is the work of a psychologist, right? You unveiling the things that you it's too hard for me to see for myself. But if it's something that I'm it's in my shadow, unconsciously speaking, or not in my hidden area, if I choose to come to you and say, Yuri, I would like to tell something about me that nobody knows, right? Which means I'm opening myself. It's also an act of courage. So I think all of it is to say that forgiveness is truly an act of honoring, of respecting, but also of trusting the other. Don't you think?
Absolutely, and it is a humongous act of courage. I think you said it very well. Like I mentioned, humility and everything, but it takes a lot of courage to
Yeah.
go against what I said, like about the unconventional opinions.
Yes.
Habit and conventionalism exert a strong power over it. So it takes a lot of courage to go against the current, because the current is make them pay, make them learn. Don't do that.
Yes.
You're gonna debase
Yes.
yourself. Wear a mask, pretend everything is fine. You have your
Yes.
mask there.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the reality is, it takes a lot of courage to go against the current, but we must do so because that's going to be the path forward. That's going to be the way
Yes.
ahead. So that's why I wanted to
And
like inject optimism and
yes.
say we're not there yet, but we'll get there.
Yes, yes, and I love that you brought so many different books. They
Oh,
are in the comment sections. I tried to bring to everyone so that we have that for anyone who wants to read more. Those are an amazing set of references from Andre Luis collection to Emmanuel to Joanna DeAngelis. We
Kardec, the
gave to
Bible,
Kardec.
everything. No, I
You
like
brought
that's something I always like to do in my talks. Is always
yes.
whenever I'm presenting, one of the things I love about spiritism is this congruence of information. So I like to show people that it's not just one book or like you can see the
Yeah.
congruence of different spiritual benefactors and everything just saying basically the same thing with a different vestment, with a different clothing, but it's the same message. And I think
Yes.
that brings a lot of like power and hopefulness into the equation.
And it just, as you said, just 1 hour that we're together on forgiveness, discussing this path of forgiveness to forgiveness, right? There's also the questions of how many more issues and areas that we need to think and learn. And it's not about intellectual learning, but it's really the learning of the heart, right? The
Yes.
learning of
Yes.
emotional and spiritual, and eventually it's transposed into our physical self. We were talking earlier today about our physical vulnerabilities lately
Yeah.
with either flu or allergies or whatever else in between. So let us all be healthy and heal from inside out. But Yuri, we are at time, and I just wanted to know if you don't mind closing today's topic with a prayer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So let us close our eyes, take deep breaths, elevating our thoughts to our Father, elevating our thoughts to our Master Jesus so we can connect through our thoughts and feel the love and feel the warm embrace of the spirits of those who work in His name. May we have open hearts and open minds to carry on the lessons learned here today and utilize them in our lives on the path forward. May we carry these blessings that we received from the love of everybody involved into our week. And so be it.
So be it, everyone. For if you are watching this live, have a wonderful rest of the day. If you are in the US, like me and Yuri, right? It's a still early morning, we can say here in the uh, southeastern part of the country. But for everybody else out there, have a wonderful time and a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful rest of the week. And see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.